Let's call a meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of San Clemente's open for Wednesday, May 8th. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Wu, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Please join me for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Brown, absent. Commissioner Kaczynski. Here. Commissioner Talley, absent. Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Rulin. Here. And Chair Crandall.
Here. We have one item I'd like to announce, that our Mayor, Steve Schwartz, passed away this morning, and the city is putting out a formal notice regarding that, but want to just have a moment of silence for him and then leave it up to the city to make the details and all known to the public. So if we can have a moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. And we will go to special orders of business. We have none. We have some minutes to approve, and let's see how many we can get approved this term. We've got the minutes of March 6th study session, which I believe we do not have a quorum for. We have the regular meeting of March 6th. We do not have a quorum for. So we have the minutes of April 3rd, and I believe we do have a quorum. The people present were Chris Kaczynski, Commissioner Rulin, and myself. So do we have any changes or a motion?
I'll move to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Kaczynski, second by Rulin. All in favor? Aye. We have abstentions, which would be by Commissioner Blackwell and Commissioner Wu. Then we have a Planning Commission meeting of April 17th, and we have a quorum for that one. The only one abstaining on this one would be Commissioner Rulin. Do we have any changes or a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Kaczynski. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Wu. All in favor? Aye. That passes 4-0-1. And that should do it for the minutes. The next item is oral and written communications. Members of the audience may address the commission on matters of public interest which pertain to the city and are not otherwise on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and make your presentation. Please limit your presentations to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak on something that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will close that item. The next is a consent calendar, which is a proposed parking prohibition at 702 Avenida de Estrella. And we have a presentation. Does anyone want to call that up for discussion? Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion on the item?
I will move the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Rulin, second by Blackwell. All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. The next item is public hearings. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony. To facilitate the meeting for all attendees, the public is asked to limit their individual presentations to 3 minutes. Following the closure of the public hearing, the Planning Commission will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act on the matter by motion. The first item is 940 Kayamanser K and L, amendment to the conditional use permit 18607, minor architectural permit 19109, Drift Distillery modifications, and we have a staff recommendation to continue this item to May 23rd. Do we have a motion?
I will move we continue this item to the May 23rd Planning Commission meeting.
Motion by Ruland, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kozinski. All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Item B, 990 Avenida Vista Hermosa discretionary sign permit 18215 Vista Hermosa Esplanade Target Center, and Crockett, I thought I saw her here earlier. There she is. We got there quicker than you expected.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll be presenting this item, a request to amend the master sign program for Target to include the recently approved expansion of the center, the Vista Hermosa Esplanade at 990 Avenida Vista Hermosa in the Forester Ranch specific plan area. The project site is a 14.8 acre property at the northwest corner of Avenida Vista Hermosa and Avenida La Plata. The site contains a 140,000 square foot Target store. On December 19 of this past year, the Planning Commission adopted a resolution approving the expansion of the retail center and a tentative parcel map to split the property in two. The expansion includes new buildings, including a drive-through. The applicant had also proposed modifications to the master sign program through a discretionary sign permit to include signs for the new businesses in the center. However, the discretionary sign permit for the project was tabled by the Planning Commission due to concerns related to the size and the number of the signs proposed. The applicant has since reduced the number of signs, and staff has verified that the tenant signage that's outlined in the proposed master sign program is consistent with zoning code regulations and design guidelines with regard to size. The Design Review Subcommittee reviewed the proposed master sign program as amended in March and recommended that it proceed to Planning Commission for consideration. The existing master sign program for Target includes 2 monument signs at the main entry drive with Target logos, as well as Target wall signage, and no additional Target signage is proposed. Existing and proposed signs are summarized in Table 2 of the staff report. New signage includes a modification to one of the existing monument signs to allow more tenants, up to 4, and a new monument sign at the corner of Vista Hermosa and La Plata. Each tenant would also be permitted to have wall signs on the business frontage. Additionally, up to 2 menu signs for the drive-through would be permitted as well. All proposed signs meet the code requirements for maximum sign area and height. Specifics regarding their consistency with the design standards and general plan policies are summarized in Table 3 of the report, as well as the resolution. The modified monument sign type 1 is located on the west side of the primary entry and could have up to 4 additional tenant names as shown. New Monument 4 would be located near the corner of Vista Hermosa and La Plata, approximately 25 feet back from each street out of any site distance triangles, which was verified by the engineering department. The new sign would be 5 feet 6 inches tall and have 38.88 square feet of copy area. The proposed master sign program specifies that the new tenant copy on the monument signs would be pin-mounted, halo-illuminated bronze letters for a unified look complementary to the sign design. The new monument sign 4 is consistent with the design of the existing monuments, but a little bit smaller in scale. The applicant has submitted a conceptual modified landscape plan for the area where the new sign will be placed. It's included as attachment 5, which was approved by Pat Murphy, and condition 3.11 requires full detailed landscape and irrigation plans to be submitted prior to permit issuance. New tenant wall signs would be permitted up to 1 square foot of sign area per lineal foot of frontage, up to 25 square feet per sign, with one sign per elevation per business. This could permit certain tenants with multiple frontages to have more than 64 square feet of wall sign area, which the code permits only with the approval of the discretionary sign permit. Additional height and width restrictions for each sign are specified in the master sign program to ensure that the signs are complementary to the building facades. 2 new drive-through menu boards are also permitted for the drive-through tenant, each up to 30 square feet as permitted by the code. The applicant has consistently revised the sign program in response to the Design Review Subcommittee and Planning Commissioner's feedback throughout this process by modifying sign design, reducing sign size, and reducing the total number of signs. Because the proposed signage in the Master Sign Program amendment meets all standards in the code and is consistent with design standards and general plan policies, as outlined in the report and draft resolution, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the Master Sign Program amendment. I'm available to answer any questions at this time, and the representative for the applicant is here as well this evening.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions specifically for staff?
I do.
Commissioner Blackwell.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
We meet again.
Indeed.
Yes, we've seen this quite a bit. So it's nice to see how far the applicant has come with the design, and we've gone back and forth through design subcommittee, and looks like there's something nice happening here. But I do have some questions about the landscape. You mentioned that Pat Murphy had reviewed their conceptual landscape design plan and had no recommendations, just approved it as submitted?
Correct. He had no recommendations. He pointed out that the trees, that are existing, that are listed as to be moved, he said that we should make sure that happens, that those trees are moved, as opposed to, I assume, just tossed.
Okay.
But that was his only additional comment.
Okay. And we had discussed at one point in time, either, I think it was at the design review subcommittee level, might have been here, that staff look at the original landscape plan and identify any areas of deficiency. Was that done, and was there any deficiencies noted?
Yeah, so the landscaping at the site overall, I guess it could use a little additional maintenance. There have been a few specimens that appear to have, died or are struggling. And so typically the city handles that through, through code compliance. The applicant has proposed new signage and also has an approved conceptual plan for the parcel that has the new buildings. So that will all be updated prior to permit finals for the new buildings. This proposed landscape at the corner will be updated prior to finals for this sign. And the applicant has indicated that any maintenance that needs to occur, Target, who is not the applicant, for this application will diligently work on that and work towards that with staff through our typical process when there's a lack of maintenance.
Okay. And finally, there in the landscape plan, there's just for the specimen trees that are flanking the monument at the corner of La Pata and Vista Hermosa. It's noted as platanus species, but there are numerous kinds, two specifically, that are common in the area. One is much smaller than the other at maturity, and I'm wondering which one was selected.
I would have to defer to the applicant on that because I do not know which one they selected.
Commissioner Rowland.
Thank you. A quick question. I just can't remember, is Avenida La Pata designated scenic corridor from our general plan, like Vista Hermosa is?
I know Vista Hermosa is, but I do not know for sure about La Pata.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wu?
Hi, Katie. Are we treating these two parcels, since the two parcels are legally divided now, they are separate parcels, are we treating them, one project?
We are treating them as one project, hence one master sign program. Part of the original, or I'm sorry, not the original approval, part of the approval in December did include deed restrictions to that effect, both with regard to the shared parking, maintenance, things like that. The applicant for that is currently working on that document, and they will be including signage provisions in there as well, since there's signage on the opposite, parcel.
Okay. Well, according to the table 2 on your page 5, there's one monument sign per street frontage, then one additional sign for sites with more than 150 feet of street frontage. So since it's a long frontage, 2 would be allowed. Then you have the third one. Do you count that as a street frontage of La Parra, or if you count it as a Hermosa, Vista Hermosa, there will be 3. And in our general plan policy about the scenic corridor, I'd like to confirm that both La Parra and Hermosa, they are major scenic corridors in our general plan per the mobility elements. And the policy says, M1.33 says, we regulate the view of the size, height, numbers, and the types of on-premise signs to minimize their impact, their meaning signs impact to scenic corridors. How do you reconcile this? We have 3 from La Parra, no, from Vista Hermosa. There would be 3 signs, 3 monument signs, and while the policy asks to minimize them.
So the one at the corner ended up the way it is in response to some previous comments from commissioners that it be that it reflect the design of the existing monuments. There were a couple of different signs proposed on La Pata, which were more traditional monument signs throughout this process. So more standard, double-faced, really oriented towards Avenida La Pata. This one at the corner ended up there, as I said, in response to other commissioner comments. It is only 5.5 feet tall, I believe, if memory serves, and it is sort of set back into the hillside. Because of its great distance from the other 2 existing signs, I think the impact on Vista Hermosa is, if that's what you're kind of getting at with the 3 signs on Vista Hermosa, I think the overall impact is minimized.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kozinski.
I have a question. During your presentation, you said the number of signs have been reduced.
Correct.
From what?
Well, we're going back to before this was my project, but based on the records, they have removed at least 2 monument signs, so actually, 2, and modified that one that remains that they're adding. There were, if memory serves, 2 traditional double-faced monument signs on La Pata, and they had proposed an additional, in addition to the 2 that exist, monument sign right in front of the new buildings, again double-faced on Vista Hermosa. So there were 5. There are now 3 total.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Thank you, Commissioners and staff. My name is Greg Fick with Tate & Associates. I'm representing the developer Cadence Capital Acquisitions. Just want to thank everyone for their time throughout the process, and feel that we have come finally to present a sign program that hopefully can get approved today. Just want to reiterate how important that for leasing for our piece, that sign at the intersection is. Basically, we can't we have leases contingent on having a monument sign there. We do know that it's a gateway sign, but we feel that the design is consistent with other gateway signs within the city of San Clemente as well. So we took that into account. As Katie mentioned, the size of the monument sign is less than 6 feet, so I wouldn't consider that to be large as well. Here to answer any questions that you may have. We also have our landscape architect here too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wu.
I do have a question. At the corner, you name it Vista Hermosa Esplanade. At the entry, you still keep the Target bullseye logo.
We do not have a bullseye logo on that corner intersection sign.
Right. At the corner, you have Vista Hermosa Esplanade. That's your new name.
Yes.
At the entry, you don't have that name repeated. You have the Target bullseye logo there.
That's their business, yeah.
Okay. So if
The gateway sign is the center identification. That's the gateway. That's where we want to identify the name of the shopping center.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Blackwell.
Thank you. I have a question for the landscape architect, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. No problem.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so looking at the plans, very colorful. It's nice.
I like colorful.
So, in your opinion, what would you say in these soil conditions out here in this region, the height of the red rooster might be at maturity?
Oh, probably 2 feet max.
2 feet max, and then the
Yeah.
carpet roses might be taller than that, you think?
Yeah, I would think so. And plus, there's a little bit of grade, too, between the base of the sign and the corner, so it kind of displays up
Okay.
as you look at it.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. I just was a little concerned about the grass. I've seen it get taller than 3 feet.
Yeah, the
in some
red
areas.
rooster is a little bit smaller variety.
Okay. Okay, and then the, on the Platanus noted here, which species were you
Well,
intending?
on site, there's Racemosa, the California sycamore. It's also at the entry at the, I guess, north or west end, depending on which way. I think north is up, up the coast. So it would be the Racemosa California sycamore.
Okay, that's good. That's what I was hoping to hear. Was a little concerned about the, they're multis, and you've got them 5 feet at center from the sidewalk. You want to talk about that a little bit and what your thoughts are?
Well, they are, and, I mean, I'm looking at them right now and where they're positioned. Certainly root barriers would be involved in their installation. Our standard is if you're within 6 feet of hardscape, it gets a root barrier, which helps, Their final position could shift a little bit if that's the preference, It's probably never a bad idea to give them a little bit more room, but I don't think they need to be, I think the idea was to sort of engage that corner, and I think the ones at the north end are pretty close as well, but there's no sidewalk in that location except along Hermosa. Did I get the name right? Yeah.
So, so during our design review meetings, there was discussion about placing some specimen trees, maybe flanking behind the monument to sort of showcase the monument itself and create more of a visual appeal, a grander appeal at that corner. And I'm wondering why they were set so far to the edges, away from instead of behind it and kind of in the scene, more on the outskirts.
Well, one thing I'm sure you can recognize in this, the Target store and their logo at the top, so recognition of that and view to that was a definite consideration. And like you said, use the word flanking, and I think that's what these trees do. They really kind of do flank that corner. It's a pretty big corner, and they're pretty good-sized trees, so I think they're going to create a nice impact. The oak trees, we say they're going to be relocated, and I think the notion was to move them upslope a bit. And in doing that, I think we could also create that sort of backdrop that you're looking for in the final design and the final plan. We don't really show the position of them. They're relocated from these locations, and I think we can take a close look at that when we do the final drawings.
Okay. Well, just a moment, I'm going to ask staff a question about the hill. Do we have any topo on that? Do we know how high that hill is from the right-of-way to the top? I'm guessing about 80 feet or 60 feet maybe.
It's not a number that I have committed to memory, and I don't have the topo with me, unfortunately. Okay. But it definitely is something that we've looked at as we've been reviewing the placement of this sign.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And the reason I'm asking is because the California sycamore gets 60 feet tall over time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there would be that much obstruction really if they were to be moved in a little closer behind the monument to sort of frame it a bit away from the sidewalk. I think, unless you totally disagree, I think that would that'd be a little bit better to get those get to be very large and a multi right next to the right-of-way. That way you'd have encroachment over time and possible tree trimming, big branches removed, etc. Possibly. So if you're going to move them back anyway, you might as well maybe bring them in a little closer to the back of the monument.
I think once you do that, it's not, I mean, it's a tall slope, but sycamores are tall trees, and, eventually over time. And, of course, we're looking down the road. There was one thing that's there's a storm drain line that comes down there that we wanted to avoid, and we also wanted to create some balance on the left and the right-hand side of it. So if we're balancing because of something that's existing today, we wanted to repeat that balance on the other side, basically mirror that. So and this view is great, but it's like from one position, and you're going to have a variety of different views as you approach that corner. You're going to see these trees on the right are going to feel a little closer. The ones on the left are going to feel a little further, and then as you get closer to the corner, you're going to see this presentation that you see here, and then the same thing happens going the other direction. So I mean, I think it's a pretty good arrangement right now.
They are deciduous too, so even if there was rapid growth and any sort of blockage,
I'm sure we'll have
at least 3 months of the year, you'd be able to see right through the trees. So.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? We will close the presentation portion, open it for public comment. Eileen, do we have any cards for this item? No cards? Very good. We will close the public comment, open for discussion. Do we have some public discussion? Commissioner Wu.
Thank you. Regarding the monument sign on La Parra and on Vista Hermosa in that vicinity, the first example I can think of is at the street corner of La Parra and Pico. There's a courtyard at Talega. It's about perhaps 4 feet tall, and it's a project identification sign. And there's no individual tenants advertised on that monument. And that leads me to think about the tower element for the Sacramento outlet. And we approved that tower sign, but we said use it for project identification with Sacramento outlet only, without the applicant asked for some places for individual tenants, but we did not approve that. Given the fact that both Avenida Vista Hermosa and Avenida La Parra are major scenic corridors from the city, and the city policy that we ought to minimize the impact of the signs to the scenic corridors, I'm of the opinion that I can support a third monument at this location. It would be considered a third monument of Avenida Vista Hermosa, so be it. But I have a little bit of hard time to support the individual tenants advertisement at this corner. They are far away from the new parcel that is going to be split from the target site. That's my thought.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Rulon?
Thank you. Yeah, and first let me say I appreciate the applicant working with us. I know they worked with us a lot, both on the site design and now with the signage. I have no issue with the building signage. I have no issue with the additional signage on the existing monument signs, but I am really struggling with the addition of the new monument sign right on the corner of La Pata and Vista Hermosa. People sitting at that intersection are going to be looking at what amounts to 6 different indicators there between target, the site announcement, plus the 4 tenant signs. When I look at the existing monument signs, there's ample room on both of those signs, actually, for all of the new businesses that are there. I know they want to use one of the signs for 4 of the businesses. That's a controlled intersection as well, which means there's going to be people who are slower, going slower, being people who are stopped. So it's a pretty visible area right there. And it is 2 monument signs, in an entrance. I think in one of the worst case situations we had at the Estrella Mall with, that deep setback mall, I think we ended up with 3 monument signs, and all of those were right next to the driveway cutouts there, the curb cuts. The landscaping is well done, and I appreciate your questions on the landscaping and keeping on top of that. But, I like the signage for the project, including, more tenant signage even on the existing monument signs, but I have a real problem with the intersection of a couple of scenic corridors, adding a new large monument sign that, in terms of our use, is for that area is kind of questionable and goes beyond what we've traditionally done along scenic corridors. For instance, the monuments for the Ralphs, for instance, right up the street. So there's a bit of a precedent that we would then be setting. I really sympathize with the applicant. I understand they've got leasing agreements that are associated with the signs. I don't like making anyone's jobs more difficult, but that is their business, and it's our business to be concerned with the scenic corridor and have a place, while having a place there that's going to be, has a good chance of being successful. Let's see. Yeah, and then all in all, just the great distance, really, that monument sign is from the actual businesses that they represent. I can't think of where we actually have something that is that far away. So, I know there's other people who are going to speak, and I'm really interested in what your perspectives are as well. But for me, at the moment, everything on this project works except the addition of that new monument sign. So, and I would even be willing to put in a condition that they can use both existing monument signs for tenant signage, and make that allowable if that's something that can work for them. But the addition of this new sign is really, really difficult for me. So, thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in for the moment. We've got, if we're calling it a scenic corridor, that doesn't predicate using signs or anything like that. This is not a gateway, which we mandate Spanish colonial revival to a high quality, et cetera, and this does not block the view in any way, shape, or form, being nestled up against the hillside. So I have no problem with the sign on La Pata and Vista Hermosa affecting that. I don't want to see us get into dictating what copy or whatnot goes on the sign. The area of copy we can discuss, but I don't think we can discuss text or content. And I don't want us to make that mistake. I think they've done a good job. I really actually think it enhances the corner. Right now, it's a bare corner, and I like the wall concept. The fact that they acquiesced and didn't put the target sign on that monument sign, just leaving the one on the building itself to take care of the corner, and gave the project an identity. So if anybody, right now, everybody knows it as the Target Center. But being one project, I know at the Estrella project, we have a couple on Estrella and then one around the corner as a monument sign. So they actually have three, two on Estrella and one on the end street for monument signs. So I don't think it's excessive. They haven't put a lot of copy on that. If you assume that there was Mal, help me out here, I think when we were being a study session on signage, project identification as a name was somewhat different than advertising the stores. Do you remember those comments, or we were kind of schooled in that, and since it wasn't the stores themselves, it fell kind of under a different eye as far as approval.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where we're going with this.
It may have been trademark, maybe.
I'm sorry?
It may have been regarding trademarks. I mean, people are saying, you know, as far as identifying usages, they could have not done the site and put other copy in there because the square footage was calced with the whole thing, correct? With the Esplanade sign or whatever also. So they could put anything they want in there. And I think what they've done is sensitive to the project. But I thought there was something.
Well, there's a clause in the sign code, in every sign code, that allows, it's called a substitutions clause, that allows for any copy to be placed within the sign. I mean, literally anything that's non-commercial can be placed in there. So if you have a Target sign that's approved up to 40 square feet, they can replace that with a Greenpeace sign, a Save the Whales sign, a San Clemente sign, as long as it's not a for-profit sign. So that's the savings clause that allows for that kind of replacement.
Because what I was hoping to avoid is getting into the discussion or having that project name sign changed out to a store sign.
Yeah, the savings clause wouldn't allow that. It allows for the substitution of non-commercial copy in place of commercial copy.
Okay, very good. That's what I was concerned about. So I can make the findings for this. I liked Commissioner Lulu's concern about the number of the signs, but on that corner, it actually fronts La Pata just as much as it does Vista Hermosa, and I think it was sensitive to the project. And since the area of the signs is appropriate, I don't think we dictate the text, whether it's tenants or whatnot, and I can make the findings on this. So, Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Well, I thought about this a long time and spent a lot of time out there, and I agree that the corner is it's very sparse, and it really does need something. It needs to be finished, and I think this is the right approach to that. However, I'm not completely behind the design on the landscaping. I think that there's obviously a lot of effort that's being made here to keep that portion of the hillside open and sparse behind it. So we're not going to completely address the sparseness, if you will. I think the Platanus racemosa is a great tree to use there. I think it's going to succeed in that area. I think the location could be adjusted, and we could get an even better look here. If we could bring them back behind the two tenant signs a little, maybe one behind each, and then move the other closer inside, maybe 10 feet from the sidewalk rather than 5. I think we'd have more of a tighter package there, and I think it would look good. You're still going to have the height, whether it's 5 or 6 feet lower on the slope closer to the sidewalk, or 5 or 6 feet up and 10 feet in. You're still going to, just depends on your perspective. But in terms of the overall package, the design, I think would look far better having something behind the two tenant signs. A couple multi-trunk trees back there would be great. It'd really create a canopy over the sign, really create a sense of enclosure, and and also eliminate a lot of the sparse slope behind. So if that could be done, I'd be behind this project.
Okay, could you, for our benefit, kind of jot down your thoughts that you just mentioned, so if there is
A motion?
a condition of approval
Yeah.
that we could add that would satisfy those concerns, that'd be great.
Okay.
Commissioner Wu?
No, I already
Oh, Commissioner Kozinski.
I think the applicant's done a really good job on upgrading the corner here with this sign and including all the landscaping. I agree with Commissioner Blackwell, it should be tightened up a little, and with that, I could support that, this project.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Rowland?
Thank you. You guys have made some good points. It is a sparse corner. And one way or another, building it up a little bit would be helpful. I still struggle with the fact that it is signage and it, you know, especially with a picture, it looks a little cluttered. But if we could do a lot more with the landscaping along the lines of what Commissioner Blackwell was talking about, build up some trees behind there, make it, you know, make it feel a little more integrated in there, right? Or much more integrated in there, then I would be a little bit happier, you know, with that. So I know you're writing down some ideas and you're much better on the landscaping than I am, so you know, if we could do something that really builds that up, I agree. Some kind of trees, something taller than the sign itself that would help soften that and soften the hillside in general might be nice.
Okay, very good. I see no lights right at the moment. I'd like to ask the applicant, in general terms, until we have the condition written, are you in general concurrence that you would accept that as a condition of approval?
Yeah, we would certainly look at conditional approval to enhance the landscaping. One thing that what we'd have to do is just make sure that Target approved it on their end because it is on their parcel, but they're willing to work with us, you know, to make it work. So it's something we'd definitely accept as a condition.
Okay.
Okay,
please,
okay.
Go ahead.
The box sizes that are proposed, would you happen to know offhand, or is the?
I think they recommend
16-inch, but minimum 48.
48 or 60 is what it says.
Excellent.
So, do you want me
No, that's fine. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
You need a little time to get your thoughts down? Would you like to make a motion with that condition?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that Planning Commission approve resolution number PC 1901-012, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving discretionary sign permit 18-215, a request to amend the Target Master Sign Program, DSP 09-317, to include signs for the expansion of the retail center, approved through resolution PC 18-034, located at 990 Avenida Vista Hermosa, with the condition added that the applicant would move at least 2 multi-trunk California sycamores behind each tenant sign at the monument located at the corner of La Plata and Vista Hermosa, and move the other of the 4 that are proposed at least 10 feet from the sidewalk.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Blackwell, second by Kozinski. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
We have 4-1 in approval. Thank you very much. The next item is item 8C. Special Activities Permit 19079, 2019 live bands at Ollie's Tavern. Kyle Weber is doing the report. And before we start the presentation, I have just one general question. Can you tell me why this was done as an activity permit rather than a CUP for live entertainment?
So a special activities permit is allowed for 15 15 events throughout the year. They already had one, and they just want to do roughly 14 events throughout the remaining of the summer, and it may not be something they do in the future, and so.
Okay, so they haven't applied for live entertainment in the past and been denied for a CUP?
They have not been denied for a CUP.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Crandall and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight I'm going to present a special activities permit request for indoor live entertainment with amplified sound within an existing bar. Oli's Tavern is located at 127 South El Camino Real, which is in the downtown mixed-use zone and within the architectural and central business overlay districts. Typical of mixed-use districts, the site is surrounded by restaurants and commercial uses and some above street level residential units, as well as a Valair hotel that's real nearby the project site. The bar currently operates between the hours of 2 p.m. and 2 a.m. Monday through Friday, and from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. The applicant is requesting the SAP to temporarily allow indoor live entertainment with amplified sound produced by a live band. The special activity events are proposed to occur only on Sundays afternoons between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. and solely between the months of May and September during the 2019 calendar year. And no more than 14 occasions, which is the max number allowed under the SAP, considering they were approved for one SAP event prior to this. The approved floor plan includes 78 indoor seats within the bar. The OCFA has deemed the establishment of having an occupancy level no greater than 300 persons. The band will perform on the southwest side of the building, which is highlighted here on the slide. And no exterior or interior improvements are proposed within this request. During the proposed entertainment hours, the indoor tables and seating, as shown in the picture on the left, will be removed to accommodate the amplified speakers and other necessary equipment. The sound will project towards the back of the bar, which you can see in the picture on the right. Project analysis. Oli's Tavern is an existing bar with a type 48 liquor license permitting the on-site consumption of alcohol. The establishment is looking to sustain business during the off-season for televised sports games, which is a traditional Sunday attraction for them, for their regular clientele. The project is consistent with uses in mixed-use districts and the city's general plan. In this particular area, the city of San Clemente has approved multiple permits in the past, allowing indoor live entertainment with amplified sound. The downtown T-zone area encourages uses such as the one being proposed that support its vibrant, pedestrian-oriented character. Additionally, Oli's Tavern hosted an event similar in nature on March 24th, which we talked about not too long ago. It was approved by the city and no complaints were received. Over the years, staff has compiled a running list of conditions of approval for entertainment establishments to ensure this activity does not cause any disruption to the surrounding uses and residents. Exhibit A in Attachment 1 in the packet has the full list of conditions. Live entertainment must comply with the city's noise ordinance at all times, and speakers must be directed away from the doors and windows. Previous city approvals for amplified sound typically include a condition requiring doors and windows to remain closed during entertainment hours. Staff is recommending a modification to this condition to allow their front door to remain open during the event because the front entrance is the only door available for customers accessing the bar. We worked with code compliance on exact language of this condition and their support of seeing how that works out throughout the event and making sure that it can be closed when necessary, but also being able to allow stay open. There are several conditions of approval requiring the applicant to be responsible for ensuring all activities are not disruptive to neighbors, such as requiring security personnel to be on site at all times, abiding by occupancy levels, and to consider alternatives to mitigate noise impacts as outlined in the conditions if issues do arise. If there are violations of the conditions of approval, the city has the ability to revoke or modify the SAP. So with the recommended conditions of approval, staff believes the project will not negatively impact surrounding land uses and potential noise and safety concerns are adequately addressed. Public notices were sent out and we received one public letter against the project. So that should have been sent to you digitally, and also a hard copy should have been given to you. So staff recommends the Planning Commission determine that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA and consider adopting the resolution approving the special activities permit for Oli's Tavern.
Very good, would like, any questions for staff? Commissioner Wu?
Yes, hi Kyle. On attachment 2 project site, you showed the wrong location.
It shows the wrong location.
We showed along the freeway.
Right, on this page.
So it should be
you showed it
127 South El Camino.
217 instead of 127. Does that affect your public notice?
That wouldn't affect the public notice. This map was produced by planning staff, and so notification would have been sent out from 127 South El Camino Real, not this location. So you're right, this is the incorrect location on its vicinity map, though it wouldn't affect the notification process, including
You notified the right group of people.
Yes.
You agree with that?
I'm sure of
Gabriel?
that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. We get a noticing package and envelopes from the applicant, and we confirm that it's the correct address. This is an error on our part when we map this.
Okay. And also, regarding the nearest distance to dwellings, in your analysis, you said the closest residential zone is 400 feet.
That's correct.
But given the fact that this is a mixed-use zone, what is the what is the distance to the closest dwelling?
So we have information on the closest units. You're right, that 400 feet is closest to the residential zone. Mixed uses always have residential units in them. So there was a noise study conducted by LSA, a private firm, during a separate SAP that was at JD's Tavern, and they did something similar. The band is aware that they can't go over 90 decibels, and there's a sound test that's going to be conducted by code compliance on their first event. During that LSA noise, that project that they did with JD's, decibel levels were below 55 decibels, and so by 30 feet from outside the establishment. And so considering where the closest residential area is, I believe that there's residential neighbors upstairs from Ole's Tavern, which they're aware of the events that have occurred in the past. They didn't have problems with the one that occurred on March 24th. I didn't get a chance to mention that the owner of the bar is here if there's questions that come up for that person in particular.
You said there's a residence above?
I believe so. There's residents that live above Ole's Tavern.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got one question. Going back to these emails that were going back and forth that you had with Adam Tamian on code compliance.
Yes.
It appears that the one special events permit this year was allowed, and there was a violation.
There was a violation of the conditions to keep the door and windows closed, and that's why, because it just wasn't possible, it's kind of, we kind of saw it as unreasonable to require them to keep the door closed when that's the only entrance for people to come and enter the building. And so that's why it was violated, which it was a violation.
So there's no automatic closer on the door so people can go in and out, but it closes behind them?
So I believe that it's either locked to stay closed, or we had a meeting with the applicant and the owner, and the door had to remain locked when closed, or it had to be pried open, something along those lines.
So no action was taken against that violation?
Not that I'm aware of. Since it was a one-time event, it seemed that.
And your proposal is to allow them to keep the door open?
That's correct, and that's because we asked code compliance. There was not any citizen or any person of the public that made the complaint. It was just a violation of a condition that we created that without that condition, they wouldn't have violated, but it didn't seem to cause issues during that particular event.
Okay. Commissioner Rulon.
Thank you. I noticed, unless I missed it in the conditions of approval, that there is no requirement for soundproofing if the noise is too loud. And often when we do something like this with a CUP, we have a requirement for soundproofing if necessary.
Right. And I think it's condition 17.18 That's something that code compliance and the planning staff helped create. In there, it talks about if you can't comply with the decibel level, that instead you would be required to use a certain equipment, that if you went above a certain decibel level, it would turn off the music. It was either that or keep the doors and windows closed to make sure you're not going above that decibel level. And again, code compliance is requiring them to do a sound test during their first event to make sure that they can do that.
But no requirement to dampen the sound through architectural means like we might have with the CUP.
I think because, right, no.
Okay. And is there a parking differential? Is this use considered a different use than a tavern if there's going to be primarily music? Does that cause any effect on the parking?
That's a good question. I know that they were approved for 2 parking waivers years ago when the establishment first was developed, but I'm not certain how that would affect parking. I'm not positive, yeah.
Okay. Do we know if this is a different type of use that would require different parking?
It wouldn't, this is a temporary use, and so they're still subject to the occupancy requirements of the tavern, so we wouldn't require additional parking in this case, unless we suspected there would be, a demand over what the tavern currently supplies.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is that a condition of approval?
There is a condition in there that occupancy, OCFA requires them to stick with their occupancy of 300 people or less.
I'm talking about for the fire, for the parking. In other words, if they put in a dance floor, they can occupy more people than they can with fixed tables or loose tables. So their occupancy going up, are they limited right now to something less than the fire authority allows for occupancy? If so, if parking dictates that, that shouldn't change because they wouldn't have enough parking then.
Right.
And I think that's what you were alluding to.
Right.
Yeah. So do we know that, or can we figure that out so we can?
We can figure that out.
We need to do that probably so we can
Okay.
take an action here.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, they wouldn't be able to exceed the occupancy that the fire authority and the building official allows. So even though they're having this special event, they would never be able to exceed that occupancy.
No, but we sometimes, when we say you're only allowed so many dining tables in place or seats,
Okay.
you're allowed maybe 300 in the building for fire and safety, but with parking, you're only allowed 250, 200.
Correct.
So we need to know that number and make sure that that isn't exceeded, because parking's not going to change whether there's a dance floor and live entertainment. So we need to be able to have that information to make our decision, I would assume. So if somebody can do that while we're talking, that'd be wonderful. Anyone else have a question? Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
I don't think we have a presentation available, but if we have questions, I think he'd be willing to answer them.
I think that's one. Do you know what your limitation is on seating currently?
The seating capacity is, we had it sketched out on a plan, and I think it's like 86 people.
Okay.
And when we do a small band, there's a foosball table and a video game, and we just remove that for the afternoon. So that's where the band sets up and faces towards the back. The seating capacity, I think total is, I think it's 86. And the last time we had what we call an event, there was like 45, 50 people there. Usually on Sunday we do football. We have a pretty good crowd, maybe 100 people, max, I would say. And, the band thing is going to be that or less, I'm guessing. It's not going to be anything more than what we normally do on Sundays with football, probably less. It only lasts for 4 hours in the afternoon. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Kind of does. Okay. and, Commissioner Kozinski.
Yeah, I just have a question going back to the door. You had mentioned that this door can't be closed, and if it is, it locks.
Yeah, when the door closes, it automatically locks. It's also a Dutch door, and I was hoping maybe we could shut the front windows, which I think would help tremendously, keeping the sound going to the back and off the street. And maybe the door, the Dutch door, the top of it could maybe be open for ventilation. And also, I always have a doorman at the door, so somebody will be there to open the door for people who come in and out. But the way it is now, when the door shuts, it locks.
So,
I mean, it's something I would have to.
Is that a
look in-
solution that could be easily fixed?
Yeah, that certainly could be changed or fixed. But I plan on having a door guy there anyway. But the door could be shut and not immediately locked. That could be addressed and fixed.
Yeah,
Well,
'cause-
we have a door person, at least one door person, and, another staff person on the floor. So the door thing could be, that's not a big issue. I was hoping to keep the top of the door open for ventilation, and I'm not 100% certain if we can do that right now, with the decision here. But we'd love to have that for ventilation.
So right now, you're just keeping it open because if it closes, it locks.
Correct.
And there haven't been any noise complaints in the past. What is the noise like? I would imagine.
We have a jukebox in there normally, which they play fairly loud, and there's not complaints to that. We're in the Triangle with a bunch of other bars, and that's what people are doing. And the band I don't think it's very much louder, if any, than the jukebox. I went in there recently with a digital meter, sound meter, and I turned the jukebox up real loud, and I stood in the middle of the room and it was measuring 90 decibels. And then outside it's less, I don't know, it's like half that, because all the sound is going to the back. And the band that played last time, one of my staffers called them and talked to them and asked them if they knew what their decibel level is when they play, and they said it's about 90 or less. So I don't think it's more than what the jukebox normally would be on a busy night.
Okay. And I have one question for Kyle. The reason that the door condition was removed is just because the door locks when it's closed. That's the only reason?
It was just, because it was locked, it's just unreasonable to have people knock and have to open it. It's just that their regular operation of business requires them to keep the door open.
Because a lot of the businesses on Del Mar keep their doors closed during business hours. And people
Yeah,
stop
locks
and-
can be overridden so they don't latch.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
I'm not sure if, I know they don't have that may be a way to do it, possibly. After speaking with code, that wasn't an idea that we came up with. It seemed like the best idea was to make it, when people come in and out, the door is going to be open and closed. They're going to be periodically violating the condition if we require them to keep the door closed. And so the idea to just allow them to keep it open and not make it easy for them to violate the condition was the idea.
And Chairman and Commissioners, maybe what might be appropriate is a condition that addresses how that door opens and closes, if they are going to have a door person. Right now, it's kind of open-ended, so there's the potential that it stays open longer than when someone comes in and out.
Then, if that's the case, we need to do the same for everybody who's got an entertainment CUP, and we require doors and windows to be closed. Obviously, people come in and out, so it's a temporary issue. And now we're trying to address this somewhat differently than we have all those, and I think it's inconsistent with previous approaches.
I would imagine that ingress and people going in and out as the door is swinging open and closed wouldn't violate the closed door condition, wouldn't it? I don't think that, or we could write something in there that says
it's never become an issue on the CUP approvals for entertainment. So we could put something in there, I suppose. Would be fine. Okay. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? Or staff? Okay, let's close the application. Anybody for public comment? We did receive a letter on this item which was from, oh, it's crossed out of who it was actually from, been in opposition to it. So that's in our records, so let's open it up for discussion. I don't see anybody jumping in. They just jumped. Commissioner Rubin.
Yeah, this door issue, for just the reasons you were bringing up, there's no way I could support this with leaving the door open. There's just time and time and time again over the years, we've said you have to keep the door closed. I don't think it's unreasonable to say you have to open and close the door to enter or exit the building, but, I know that there are also places that have like a double door system, right? So there's never, that open. So that's something that we've thought about in the past. We've never actually done it. But the bottom line is we've always said, hey, doors and windows need to be closed when you have live music, because especially this is not just a commercial district, it's also a mixed-use district. There's places behind here. I notice we have condition of approval 7.9. All exterior windows shall remain closed when live entertainment is being conducted. It's actually kind of funny. There's not much point in that if the door is sitting open. So I think that we need to have the door closed as we do with every other type of venue. I also have a concern about the Dutch door, because Dutch door is, I would imagine, is not a solid door, right? There's a gap in the middle from where more sound can come out. So that's a bit of the nature of the type of door is a concern. I've never seen a case where we've had in these entertainment venues that kind of a Dutch door. It's always been a solid door. But just kind of to put a stake in the ground for myself on that one, the door is kind of a showstopper for me. It's got to be closed during live music, and of course people are going to enter and exit the building. I think, I know that they're allowed, whatever it is, 14 for the year. I think there are businesses in the past where when we started doing special event permits, we've allowed less. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a few years, the casino may be an example of that. They had a certain number of events in the year, and the next year they had more. It was kind of a new thing at the time, so as an experiment, it was sort of done more carefully, more incrementally. As it turns out, there wasn't an impact. That may be something we want to consider here. This is a first time out of the gate. There are, side issues like the door and that sort of thing. It's new to the owner, new to us. And it's just something for us to consider, that rather than having every single Sunday during the summer, have this, maybe we allow, we do enough so they can do every other Sunday or something like that. Barring that, we may want conditions, make sure that the conditions are strict enough where the permission can be pulled if there are problems or, violations that aren't, not addressed quickly, that can be done by staff on a quick basis rather than coming back to us, for instance, to revoke the permit. Other than that, I think that this is, live music in this area, this is the place for it, so that's okay, just the idea of live music, in this kind of venue. I just want to make sure that we do it right and don't start sort of violating some of the good practices that we've put in place over the years.
Commissioner Wu.
Well, live music adds a lot of vibe to a downtown area. I like them. I think it will become an attraction for people. So in general, I support them. The door is just a very minor technical details. I think, Mr. Applicant, you do have to fix it. And a door can be closed without locking. That's simple.
It's actually an exiting requirement that remains unlocked at all times the building's occupied.
There are all kinds of door design that actually, so that's a normal condition. I don't know how your door functions, but that's very easy. In a worst case, you just have to have a new door. If we really want to be strict, we can have a double door, we can have a revolving door that completely shut out the sound, but I don't think we need to go there. I think if, for people temporarily coming in and out, that's okay, as long as your door is closed when people are not coming in and out. So I would consider that in compliance. So Other than that, given the history of this particular business and some code issues in the past, I do see a need for the commission. This is not a CUP, so I don't know if we can review this thing in 6 months or so. Most of them are for the summer, so I let that go. But overall, I support it, but with the added condition that we need to get the door to be fixed, to make sure it's closed when live music is ongoing.
Commissioner Kozinski?
I'm supportive of this project, and I do want to see that door fixed. I think we are just concerned about the door being propped open and the music coming out into the streets. But barring that minor detail, this seems like a great project, and I'm supportive of it.
Commissioner Blackwell?
Yes, thank you. Well, I share same concerns as the other commissioners. To be consistent with other uses that we've approved in those conditions that were applied, that the doors and windows should remain closed during those times when amplified sound is being generated. And I can make a motion, and I really...
I'm going to jump in with a few comments.
But I do have some language prepared for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are a couple of items that I think we need to take note and acknowledge the fact that that won't necessarily be every Sunday. He's got, 5 months or something to get in 14 events or whatever, I think, in the schedule. It's only from 2 to 6, or is that what we're looking at?
2 to 6.
2 to 6, during the day on the Sundays. I would like to see a condition of approval probably attached to if for any reason the city staff determines that the special activities is not in compliance with conditions of approval, that we also state that the occupancy shall not exceed that allowed by its parking, by the premises' parking. Based on that, also that the door be closed. I think that's important. I think that we're going to see over the next, well, maybe not we, but someone will be seeing over the next 20 years as mixed use comes in, this gets to be an even more complicated issue as residential comes into the commercial zones. So, but for a one-year run, that's fine. And if we wanted to put in I think it's in here under 11, that if for any reason city staff determines a special activity is not in compliance with the conditional approval, the permit may be revoked or sent to planning commission for modification. So I'd like to just say that to review that maybe after 4 shows, check with code compliance, see if there's been any complaints, so we don't wait till they've all run their course before we review it. And I think that would be an appropriate request. Mr. Blackwell, did you come up with a...
I did, but
Mr. Chair, if I can just chime in real quickly on the occupancy limit issue, understanding where the commission is going with that, and I would love if the planner would chime in as well, since I'm not a planner. But my understanding is that nearly every business in town has a discrepancy between the parking allowance and the occupancy limits in the building, right? And
it does, except for restaurants and foods where they're limited by seating.
Okay,
So
I
they
just
aren't
wanted
supposed
to
to
make sure that we
exceed so many
weren't
seats,
imposing a
et cetera.
condition that was impossible to comply with. So if the occupancy limit was higher than the seating that's permitted in the code, I just wouldn't want to impose a condition that that they couldn't comply with. It's the only concern.
I'd like to chime in too. I think given the nature of mixed use in downtown, and much of the parking is shared parking provided by the city in public parking lot, and the public parking on the street. You can imagine many people coming here. They may just walk here, or they park in public parking lot and walk here. So I'm reluctant to impose additional condition on the occupancy.
Okay, I probably couldn't support it without doing that, because they already received 2 parking waivers to get the occupancy they've got with their seating. So this would far exceed what's actually apparently available since they were given a waiver. That would be my concern. And I don't, it might be tough to enforce, but I think that they should be cognizant of it, because, I mean, there's places that you can go that have events like this. Swallows Inn down in San Juan Capistrano, and they have a band. You couldn't fall over if you wanted to in that restaurant. And I mean, they've got considerably a good amount of parking around it, but that is hopefully what would be happening. But I'm not sure that that's in the best interest of that downtown area.
But that's why there are special events, and every special events like that will create an overflow parking beyond what the applicant.
Well, then maybe it's not a good idea.
And our public parking will absorb those overflow parking.
Chairman, and if I could add to that, I'm not sure exactly what the parking requirement was when this use was approved, but looking at an aerial for the site, there is abundance of public parking next to the San Clemente Gym, and I'm sure people that go to Oldie's Tavern use parking there, but also on Avenida Granada, there's quite a few available public parking lots there. So I wouldn't worry about maybe parking not being available. There is accessible parking for people that would come for the special events. I'm looking at the actual site, they are pretty limited.
I'm just trying to get the rationale that you've got a business, whether it has a special event or not, that is limited when there's no special event, but we're going to give one each week or every week, every other week, whatever it is during the summer, to have unlimited occupancy up to the fire code occupancy, regardless of the parking. If that's the case, we need to have some kind of number and find out if there is parking, rather than guess.
I have a question regarding occupancy. This place is authorized 85 seats, is that correct?
It's 78.
78?
With the band.
And the applicant has already said there's usually over 100 during a football game. 100 people?
I'm guessing about 100.
So on a regular basis, they're already exceeding the number of seats at the establishment, but still under the fire code permitted, right?
I believe it is, yeah.
I mean, Gabriel might have to correct me, but the number of seats in a bar is just the number, that's how we determine parking, but the more people are allowed to be in a bar standing up, they can still go over that amount of seating that's available.
But I think most bars are like that. They exceed the number of seats based on the number that's standing around the bar watching televisions.
A big part of our customers are people living in the area that just walk there. I don't know if that helps or means anything, but a lot of them just walk there from all the surrounding neighborhoods. And a lot of them don't show up with a car. I don't know if that helps anything, but that's how it is.
You could just take the parking off of it and just make sure there's a condition there that says occupancy shall not exceed that which was approved. They have maximum occupancy. I mean, they shouldn't have more people in there than.
We get so few special, you know, when we do the regular entertainment one, it's a big issue. Where they can have it every day and it's, I mean, they're fixed to their occupancy, whether they move chairs out of the way or not. We approved 14 for the, nobody mentioned it, the outlet malls. And I don't think they're using the full 14. But we did it as a chunk, and that works fine. They've got plenty of parking, but I could be persuaded if we put something in there that as part of this review, it's not just sound, but it is parking and traffic issues that might be impacted.
Well, a benefit of a special activity permit is that it's not a conditional use permit. It's not, the applicant does not have entitlement to it after this short period of time.
That's correct.
That allows the city to observe the condition. If it really is an issue, then in the future, we can take it.
That's why I say if we put that in, I could be convinced that, if people are flowing out, we're going to get comments, I'm sure, from people, just because it's another live entertainment. I mean, that's a given. There will be those that may comment. But, and I'm not opposed to the entertainment. But if we can do just the comment, when it's reviewed by staff, that there haven't become any occupancy issues, that's what, just include that in the review.
Yeah, and I was basically going to agree with you. Something, I think we need something that says that there isn't a significant negative impact on parking in the area as a result of the special events, because that's the weekend in the T-zone, and if he gets 200 people and they're listening to music and buying drinks, well, good for him and his business, but that could start to choke, and negatively affect other businesses. So I think that's the only thing that we want to be careful of.
That's what I'm concerned about.
And this is, the parking isn't an exact science, right? There are businesses, we say, you can't have more than this many people ever, with that much parking, and there's other businesses, like bars where, hey, people come and they walk in from the neighborhood and they're not even driving a car, so how do you really measure it? So, but I think, as Bart said, maybe a condition where we make it clear, where staff and/or code enforcement has a chance to evaluate it, use this as a test, use this approval as a set of test cases, where we can say, okay, Sunday afternoons, while this is going on, what is parking like? It's not going to be a full parking survey, but let's ask some of the other merchants that are down there, that sort of thing, and find out, because if the applicant wants to do this again in the future, that's going to be a stronger question. It's going to be, okay, now we've done it, so what is the parking effect? So it's certainly something we would want to know, say, next year if you came back and said you wanted to do a similar application. So a condition would be good.
To that end, how about we modify condition 1.11? Let's say, if for any reason city staff determines that special activity is not in compliance with the conditions of approval or intent of the zoning code related to special activities permit, we add a language, or if for any reason city staff determine, or the special activity caused substantial traffic and parking issues around that area, the permit may be revoked. Is that okay for you guys?
That would satisfy me, absolutely. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Well, if we're going to, you're suggesting revoking the permit if there's a violation?
If it becomes, let's see, how do they word it here? If for any reason, permits, the permit may be revoked or sent back to the planning commission for modification.
Okay.
The first step will always be a modification before we revoke.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
We try to accommodate the applicant.
And there are solutions that could be explored, such as valet parking, or some sort of a reciprocal agreement with some sort of agreement with another remote parking location.
Sundays might be an issue with the church up there behind there. Their big parking lot's going to be totally full, or it's used quite a bit for the parking in that area.
Do you have an agreement with the church behind there in terms of a reciprocal parking agreement, or?
No.
No?
Never
Okay.
got any issue with that.
Okay, some businesses do, that's why I asked, so, and Sundays, obviously, they don't have that.
We talked to them about any of that.
Okay.
There's no issue with that.
Okay.
Very good.
And Chairman and Commission, if you're thinking about amending condition 1.11, right now it talks about send back to Plan Commission for modification. Do you want that issue specifically parking sent back to Plan Commission? The other option is you could have staff.
If staff can't handle it, then it would be sent back.
Yeah.
Or if they're uncomfortable in making a call on it.
Okay.
Yeah, right, because this allows you to make the call, right? You can say, oh, you're a little off, or hey, you're a lot off, you got to go to planning commission or something, right? Yeah. Yeah, Yeah, I'd prefer staff have that flexibility. So.
Do we have someone who could put together a motion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Blackwell.
Yeah, okay. Well, and we're all, not do a straw vote, but I think we are pretty clear, all of us, on the door issue. Okay. And the occupancy,
Can I make a recommendation on whatever condition you're looking for the door issue? That we perhaps say that it's something to the effect of that the sole door should be a solid single door closed during live entertainment?
I'm fine with the Dutch door being.
You think that's going to be?
If the Dutch door closes, it's tight. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no airspace.
So,
It's tight like that.
I think for starters, since it is a conditional use permit, and it's during the day.
Special event permits.
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
is.
all right, that's fine.
During the day, they're done by 6.
yeah, I would agree with that. You know, the use has its doors open frequently, and it's kind of an open, it's very inviting. I mean, not that I go in because of that, but you do have nice pool
It's a
tables.
cold beer.
By the way. But it is, you know, would be a nice thing for the applicant to have that option, to have it, half of it open or all of it open during times when music isn't being played.
So the bottom of it will be shut, but can the top of it be open or no?
No.
It has to be shut.
That's inconsistent with every other application that's been
Okay.
approved by
The whole door's gotta be
previous groups, even to us.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Ready
Mr.
for a motion? I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number PC-19-011, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving special activities permit SAP 19-079 to allow the indoor amplified sound with a live band at a bar, Oli's Tavern, located at 127 South El Camino Real, with special condition added that the front door to remain closed during times when amplified sound is being generated, doors and windows, and to amend condition 1.11 to add that staff would review the use after, is it 4 or 5?
4 would be, that's.
Four events to ensure compliance with the conditions of approval, and if found to be non-compliant, that the item would be, would come back to the Planning Commission for review, or permit revoked at the discretion of the Director of Planning. Commission, okay, just to the Commission.
Yeah. I think the wording in 111 has that code-related special activity permit. The permit may be revoked and/or sent to Planning Commission for modification. May.
Okay.
And so a may means maybe.
A second.
We have a motion by Blackwell, second by Wu, and a question by Rule.
Question by Rowan, yeah. I just want to make sure that we included all the things that we talked about. What about did we want to add to 111, the phrase after the word special activity permits, comma, or traffic/parking issues, as Commissioner Wu indicated? So that we include that?
Now, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would ask to amend it to include that.
Okay.
I second
Now,
that.
how do we do the amendments again? We've got a motion.
These are friendly amendments, so as long as the maker of the motion says yes, then
Would you accept
it's
it?
just
Yes.
part of the
Okay,
motion.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll have that.
We also, okay, occupancy not exceeding, okay, that's handled by that. We'd also talked about, okay, we'd already did applicant non-compliant. And do we want to eliminate condition 7.18, because that seems to be the condition that has all of the flips and twists about monitoring what happens when the door is open?
I think we can leave that in.
Yeah,
Oh, no. Oh, no. Front door may remain open only if.
Right. 718 seems to be saying, this is when you can leave the front door open, and we're saying, no, you can't leave it open at all.
Not during special events.
Our condition gets to the point a lot easier.
Quicker.
It's simpler, yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
But this gets into the technical noise conducted.
If I can chime in briefly?
Please.
Commissioner Rowland's correct. Condition 7.18, after the colon in the fifth line, would serve to undercut the intent of what you've done with the previous condition. So.
Scratch 718.
Yeah. With the removal of condition 7.18.
Okay, Eileen, do you have the information you need for that?
Yes, I do.
You're a wonder.
Can I just clarify something though? On the new condition about the front door windows remain closed when amplification of sound is featured, and staff facing use after for events. Those two conditions, is there a special place where they're supposed to be put, or?
Maybe, and I hate to kind of do another revision, but if we look at condition 7.9, it's very simple. All exterior windows shall remain closed when live entertainment is conducted. Maybe what we really just want to say is all exterior windows and doors must remain closed. And that would be in place of the condition that you proposed about doors.
We should add the amplified sound language in there as well, because if they've got, especially if they've got a jukebox at 90 decibels.
Okay, this is under a master heading of business providing live entertainment. And that's pretty consistent. I don't know if we need to say it twice, but we could, certainly.
Yeah, I mean.
And that was actually requested by code compliance, so that's good.
Okay, so we'll just leave it as is, but add the word door, indoor?
Yes.
Okay.
That's 7.9.
That's fine.
So what it looks like to me, just to clarify, just so we've got it all straight, because we've been jumping around, we're modifying 1.11 to add after special activities permit, comma, or traffic / parking issues.
Yes.
We're also amending it to add the text that you had indicated.
The four
thing text. We're amending 7.9 to include the doors. We're removing 7.18, and I think that's it.
Well, we're also going to add the doors and windows to remain closed during times when amplified sound is being generated, just as a general, wouldn't that be a, amplified sound is...
What number is that?
Well, that was our new condition that we added.
Okay.
Because...
well, here in 7.9, we're saying any live entertainment, and this is only for the special activities. So it wouldn't cover Thursday night when the
Yeah, we
jukebox is
don't
on.
have to address amplified sound on other days. That's already handled.
Okay.
That's not part of our approval today.
Yeah, this is just for live stuff, so.
Okay, so we have a motion by Blackwell, a second by...
A second again.
Wu, amendments by Rulon that you accepted.
Yes.
The friendly amendments.
Accepted.
So, do we have a vote on this? So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 0.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Okay, next item is item 8D, zoning amendment 17043, regulation of check cashers, pawnbrokers, and smoke or tobacco shops. And Gabriel Perez, our city planner, is going to present it.
Chairman, before I continue with this item, I just want to acknowledge Kyle Weber. He is our new community development technician. So this was his first report to the Planning Commission. You might have recalled that he was part of the parking study team for the downtown North Beach. So just want to acknowledge him and his new position. So.
Congratulations.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This item is zoning amendment 17-043, and this is regarding standards for check cashers, pawnbrokers, smoke shops, and tobacco stores. Items. Give you some background to this. The City Council initiated code amendments back in October 4th of 2016 to establish regulations for these uses, but also secondhand dealers, which are commonly known as thrift stores. Other cities have similar ordinances and regulations for those uses. Currently, pawnbrokers are allowed in the city in our permitted use table with the approval of a conditional use permit. But smoke shops and check cashiers, which we have in the city, they are not listed in our permitted uses table, and they're not defined in our code currently. For the background on this, you might recall this was before the Plan Commission back in October 17th, 2019, and that's when Veronica Morones had presented this to the Plan Commission. And there was a public hearing, and there was testimony provided by members of the public, a lot of concern about thrift stores as part of this ordinance, and there was concerns raised by the Plan Commission. Some of those concerns related to some referenced code complaints, and there was 100 code complaints that were referenced. Some of the concerns were that those complaints weren't categorized. It wasn't mentioned if they were resolved, and so Planning Commission asked for more information on those code complaints. Some of the other concerns were about thrift stores being considered with check cashiers, pawnbrokers, and smoke shops, and that the Planning Commission didn't know why the thrift stores were being grouped with those other businesses. And the Planning Commission asked that the council provide further clarification on the purpose of this amendment. And so since that time, staff did request direction from council based on some of the concerns that the Planning Commission raised. And that request was made on February 19, 2019. And so the City Council did provide direction to move forward with amendments regarding check cashiers, pawnbrokers, and smoke shops, but they gave some specific direction for thrift store regulations, and that included, providing a more detailed definition of secondhand dealers. And you might recall there was concern that this would encompass a lot more retailers than what we traditionally considered thrift stores. Also, the distance requirements, getting some justification for those distance requirements for thrift stores. Also, the means of approval. So maybe instead of a conditional use permit that we were recommending, that maybe they could go through a minor conditional use permit, which is approved at the zoning administrator level. And then also identifying methods that other cities use to regulate thrift stores. So that was direction that was provided. And so this is a city-initiated approval. Since that time, staff decided to remove check cashiers, the pawnbrokers, and smoke shops from thrift stores because there's some more research that the City Council wanted us to do. And since there was no more questions about those regulations for those three types of businesses, we thought this is ready for consideration by the Planning Commission. So what this proposal would do is add definitions for those three types of businesses, also establish special use regulations for those uses, and restricts the uses in certain zones with approval of a conditional use permit. As far as definitions, it would establish definitions. There is no definitions for pawnbrokers, no definition for check cashiers or smoke shops. So we would have that in the code. And it would also establish special use regulations. So there would be new regulatory standards. Right now, there's no operational standards for any of those businesses. It would also restrict the density of those special uses. And it would implement distance requirements from sensitive uses. And then it would require a conditional use permit to operate in the city. These would be the allowed zones permitted in the city. It would be allowed in commercial and mixed-use zones, but based on our mapping, smoke shops would be prohibited in the zones that are in the asterisk, and that's the neighborhood commercial 2 zone and the neighborhood commercial 3 zone. There are distance requirements for these businesses, and so these businesses would all have separation requirements from each other. So a pawn broker would have to be 300 feet from another pawn broker. Same thing for check cashier. It would have to be, one business would have to be 300 feet from the other. But there would also be a separation distance from sensitive uses, which would, for example, be like residential zoned areas, schools and parks, and that distance would be 100 feet. So the business would not be able to locate closer than 100 feet. For smoke shops, that distance would be 300 feet from sensitive uses, and because there's more of a concern about the attraction of children to those shops and minors smoking. This is a map of the prohibited areas in those zones. So if you look at these 2 maps, the map on the left identifies the 100-foot buffer from sensitive uses, and it also identifies the colors of the commercial and the mixed-use zones. What's shown in kind of black hatch marks are areas that would be prohibited in the zones for these types of businesses. There's, on the right, there's a 300-foot buffer map, and this would apply specifically to the tobacco and smoke shops, since the tobacco and smoke shops under this ordinance would be prohibited from locating within 300 feet of a sensitive use. So the areas in black would be areas that tobacco shops could not locate in. One additional thing that we did do is remove language regarding one of the standards for smoke shops, and this was listed as a standard 11 in the ordinance, and it specifically says no distribution of free or low-cost product or coupons, no distribution of free or low-cost tobacco, tobacco products, or tobacco paraphernalia, as well as coupons for said items shall be permitted. The reason why this was done, we reviewed this with the code compliance manager, and there was concerns about how to enforce this, because how do you define low-cost products? It's kind of ambiguous of what that would mean. Probably have to define, some type of price that would threshold for a low-cost product. But we felt that some of the other standards would. This was intended to avoid catering to minors, and so we feel some of the other standards in the ordinance would do that. So we felt comfortable removing that language. So we want to inform the Planning Commission about that. We can make the findings for the zoning amendment. One of the findings is consistency with the general plan. So that finding is listed in the resolution, and the amendment would not adversely affect public health, safety, and welfare. Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission adopt resolution 19-014, and recommending that the City Council adopt the ordinance regulating check cashiers, pawnbrokers, smoke shops, and tobacco shops, and recommend City Council find that the amendment is exempt from the requirements of CEQA. That's the end of my report, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, questions for staff? Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Gabriel, would you happen to know what the average width of a lot is along El Camino Real?
Yeah, I know when this was studied, it would be probably about 100 feet.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I just can't.
50, a lot of them are 50 even.
Yeah. Okay. And I noticed in the report that the recommendation for hours of operation to be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. for all 3
Correct.
Of the uses.
Correct.
Okay, that's recommended. And why did we choose 300-foot buffer from sensitive uses rather than 600 or 400?
I know there was some research done of other cities, but actually in other cities, the buffer was more. Sometimes it was up to 1,000 feet. So I didn't see a number that matched another city that had 300 feet. So it is somewhat of an arbitrary number, and we could choose to be use a number that's higher or lower than that.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu?
I gave you, on the proposed resolution, attachment 1, page, on the 4th paragraph, second line, it said, including excessive illegal signage, donations left outside the business. I assume that is inherited from the previous ordinance.
Is that on the resolution?
That's a resolution.
I'm sorry, what
It's
page?
in both.
On the first page of the resolution, number PC 19-014.
Oh, okay.
4th paragraph, whereas it mentioned a donation left outside the business as a part of the concern.
Yeah,
Should that be?
that is a carryover. I would
Right, that's a
recommend
carryover.
that donations left outside the business and be removed from the resolution.
Right. Then also on attachment 5 on the exhibit, you still label them as a thrift store ordinance. Shall we also change them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we go to page 7 of attachment 1, well, no, attachment 2, that's a resolution for the city council. Underneath the smoke or tobacco shops on the table on page 7. We allow smoke shop or tobacco shop in neighborhood commercial 1.3, but not in 1.1, 1.2, 2, and 3. Can you explain what?
And I think that was because based on the buffering, there wouldn't be any permitted area in those zones. So I guess it could be permitted, but if you applied the buffer requirements of 300 feet, it technically wouldn't be able to be located there.
Okay. Now, if we back to page 6, underneath the minimum standards for tobacco and smoke shops, go to D3, adjacent uses. No smoke or tobacco shop shall be located within 300 feet of a residentially zoned property, school, hospital, playground, or public park, or any place where children are expected to be present. In all our mixed-use zones, do you expect children to be present?
Yes, that could be the case.
So shall we exclude them from mixed-use zones?
I mean,
Wouldn't the intent there be that where children are present in some kind of concentration, like in a school or a park or something like that?
And I believe that was the intent of this, because in the playground, that's something intended specifically for children as well as a school.
If
Please jump
there's
in.
concern with that language, it could be changed to say, or any similar place where children, et cetera, et cetera. That then focuses the language to make it clear that what we're referring to is locations like schools, parks, playgrounds, or similar locations where children are present. That way, it's not a catch-all, because, look, kids can be present anywhere in the city, and this would preclude smoke shops from being located anywhere without that additional language, potentially.
Right, but our 300 feet buffer map is based on all residential zones, not based on those concentrated locations like a school, hospital, playground, or public park. So if it's within 300 feet of a home, then you cannot have it. Similarly, you would have a lot of some residential users in mixed unit, even in neighborhood commercial. The city allow them to have affordable housing. So when that happens, you will have residents exposed to the potential effect from smoke shops. We want to protect people from a single-family zone, or other residential zone. Why wouldn't do it for residents in mixed-use zones or affordable housing residents in neighborhood commercial zones?
Right, and that's something the Planning Commission could elect to do, and so that's the threshold that staff used for this, which is the mixed use and commercial zones, that we'd allow it there, but, you know, if the Planning Commission want to consider mixed use zones, that's something that you could recommend to council.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kozinski.
I just have one small thing. Minimum standards, page 3, attachment 3, number 7, says no smoking on premises. No smoking shall be permitted on the premises anytime. Should we include vaping?
I think it was somewhere.
You said page 3 of
Page 3, attachment 3.
okay. And I'm sorry, which standard?
Number 7.
Numbers. Yeah, and we could add that, and I think that's implied by mentioning smoking in some of the definitions that we have, but that can easily be added.
Okay.
Number 7 on page 3 of attachment 3. Or vaping.
Okay, I'll jump in. I took kind of a different approach to reviewing what we've got here. No, this is a question for, at our last meeting, and in our minutes, we requested a whole bunch of different items for additional information so we could justify these changes. Right now, we've got in basically just the report, here's the backup information. Currently, there are several check cashers and smoke shops active in the city. We have received 5 complaints regarding smoke shops, 1 complaint regarding check cashers, and it lists almost no complaints over the, what was it, 11 years or whatever? 18 years. So in the minutes of the meeting, we had requested additional information regarding the 100 complaints that have come in during the last 20 years, including whether the complaints were justified, the business's responses to the complaints, and the focus of the complaint. We haven't received anything on that to substantiate change. I'm being devil's advocate here now. So if somebody in 20 years reviews this and asks, what did they base these decisions on? We didn't get that. We requested staff clarify with City Council what the problems proposed by these land use regulations are intended to solve and address. Whether we get that or not, that's not a big issue. And we requested additional analysis, including correlation between illicit activities in those stores. Suggested police enforcement and increased public safety might be the first step to address the problem. Noted lack of information on the complaints does not provide specific information to conclude that restricting the businesses in this manner is a good solution. We haven't had anything to do that, to really back up these decisions we're making here. And then also in the, I think somewhere it lists a number of complaints, illegal signs, etc. And in the ordinance changes, nothing's even addressed about those items. I don't know when you read this, it said, let's see here. These types of violations, okay. The city has received complaints and concerns about the operation of these businesses in San Clemente, including excessive illegal signage, donations left outside, which was already addressed, and merchandise on display outside. These types of violations impact some business districts in the city. That's the only complaints that we've been told have occurred, and the ordinance change doesn't address any of those.
And I could address those for you, Chairman. So you might recall in October of 2018 when this was first presented, so the list of 100 complaints, 95 of those were specifically for thrift stores. So the remaining ones that I mentioned in the staff report were just for check cashiers and for smoke shops. We don't have any pawn shops, so there's no complaints to be made about those type of businesses. So 4 of those complaints were about smoke shops, and those complaints were mostly about signage. One was about outdoor cooking. One other complaint was about the selling of pornography. And so all of those have been resolved for those complaints. So if you think about the scope of the complaints from 1998 to 2016, they're limited to those 5 complaints, and they've since been resolved.
So what is the basis for choosing to separate these? I know what it is, but nobody's saying that it's the clientele that frequent those locations are not popular and could be a problem. So we're making these changes without substantial justification. So if I reviewed this and went back 20 years from now and reviewed this, I'd say they based this on nothing other than personal preference.
And one of the points that the City Council made when we were seeking direction on this was some of the original intent for establishing regulations for these businesses were because we have nothing on the books, right? Smoke shops, check cashiers are not listed right now. And so if we want to allow them in the city, they really should be listed.
Okay.
And we should determine if we want them to be allowed as permitted by right or conditionally permitted. And so the thought by allowing them to be conditionally permitted is allowing the Plan Commission to address health and general welfare concerns for any of these businesses. And there's no standards for operating standards for any of these businesses. So so we had to look at other cities to see what they have on the books. There are some cities that don't have any standards for any of these businesses. There are some cities that don't permit check cashiers or smoke shops in their city. So there was the intent of having something on the books for some of these businesses. And I think that's part of what initiated this from the City Council. It was mentioned last time by the City Council when we saw direction from them in February. So despite the complaints on here, which might look minimal, part of the genesis of this is because there's nothing on the books.
Okay.
And so it makes it difficult for staff to.
It does.
To regulate, and if there were complaints about these businesses, you know, there's no standards to enforce.
Okay. Commissioner Rulon.
Could you give us some insight as to the motivation for the security plans for these 3 types of businesses? Like what kind of, you know, why do these businesses require security plans versus, and others might not?
Yeah, you know, some of these businesses, for example, like a pawnbroker, you know, you might have cases where you have, you know, illicit activities that were occurring, right? And so you might have stolen goods that they're trying to cash that in at a pawn shop. And so those that could be some of the genesis there, is that you're going to have potentially some of that illicit activity that related to like a pawn shop, and so you want to try to avoid that by establishing a security plan. We observed a security plan requirement in the city of La Habra, and so since this is observed in a couple other cities, that we thought this might be wise to have a standard such as a security plan for pawn shops and check cashiers and the smoke shops. But you know, it's something that the Planning Commission could decide to include or not to include, but we thought it'd be appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Blackwell.
So, thank you. So the standard language here on all three is that there would be no, for example, no pawnbroker within 300 feet of another pawnbroker. However, it doesn't apply to the other two uses that are included here. So we could have a pawnbroker 300 feet away from another, but we could have, you see, so you can create a kind of a proliferation of the same, similar batched use all along the streetscape. So it's something to think about. And then the 100 feet, can you talk to me about what was behind the 100 feet from sensitive uses instead of a standard 300 feet separation across the board? You said you looked at other jurisdictions, and it's not uncommon to see, say, 500 feet applied in both cases.
Yeah, I think in this case, the 100 feet, we thought this might be a typical depth of a lot, maybe like, for example, like on lots, commercial lots on El Camino Real or a residential lot. So this would avoid, since there are residential uses next to commercial uses, this would set at least a lot separation between a commercial use like a smoke shop or a pawnbroker from a residential use. So it is to prevent it from being, you know, right next door to each other. So you'll have at least a lot separation between the two, and maybe even a street.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for you, Gabriel. Thank you.
Okay, I see no more questions for staff. We will close the presentation portion and open for public comment. I've got one card from Theodore Lee. Come right up.
My name's Theodore Lee from Laguna Niguel. Thanks for your time. I own Interlimit Smoke Shop at 508 North El Camino Real, Palazado and El Camino Real. Gabriel clarified some stuff for me in an email today. You know, we've been there for 20 years, and we're a destination, I think. It's a big deal, you know, it's my life. And if I understand correctly, I'm grandfathered in, right? So we don't have to move, or you're gonna shut us down, I assume, unless I expand, something like expand or move in the city, us relocate. But I see the minimum standards, and like, I don't know how that's gonna apply. I don't know, am I still grandfathered in, like hours that I'm open, right? We're open 9 to 10 every day. We have been for 15 years, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. If I had to close at 7 p.m., it's going to destroy my business. It's just, you know, people come, we got people from all walks of life, from rich to poor, come to my shop. They all work different hours, and, you know, it's hard enough to compete against brick and mortar. I gotta be open, right? I gotta be open to sell stuff. And so I don't understand. And the security thing that you guys were speaking of, I don't know what that means to someone like me and my business. I have no clue. It's not very clear to me. I mean, are you asking me to hire a security guard all the time? We never really have any issues. So, I don't know. I don't know if you can answer questions, or I don't know what's going on.
Okay, I would request Gabriel if he can respond to those questions so we know the answer also.
Yeah, I did speak with Theodore earlier today, and so we did some outreach to some of the smoke shops that are currently operating in the city. And so what we mentioned to them, the intent of the ordinance is to address new businesses new smoke shops in the city. So these standards wouldn't apply to his business unless he decided to expand his business or relocate in a new location in the city. So, so in the case, if he continues to operate in the storefront where he operates, this would not apply, including the time restrictions.
Okay, you agree with that, Mel?
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually currently in the non-conforming use section of the code to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. We will make sure Mal can give you an answer here in a little bit. And we'll get that answer during our discussion period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will close public comment, open for discussion. You can see where I was going. I played devil's advocate tonight to kind of make sure we're sending something to City Council that can be justified. Gabriel made me feel a little more comfortable that the intent is to get these things into the code, get them a definition. And I will say that it still appears that the separation distances and the times and all are somewhat arbitrary because we have no backup information to base it on, which we kind of requested. So I would at least say that I would hope we provide that to City Council when they get this to review, if it goes through tonight, that there is an explanation why the separation, why the hours, whatnot. So in the future, if anybody questions why it was done, there's a reason for it. So let's start with Commissioner Wu.
Oh, thank you. Well, last time we talked about it, much of the comments were focused on thrift ordinance. My recollection is the commission was okay with the other three elements, which are the pawn shop, smoke shop, and the check. I do agree with the chair that the justification seemed to be a little bit pulling out of thin air. But I recognize the need for the city to regulate them. I would make the recommendation to the City Council. I'd like to remove the smoke shop from mixed use, so possibly NC 1.2 zone altogether. Our general plan envisioning the city to be a healthy community, and I think just considering the potential negative health effect to people, especially children and senior people, there will be when the mixed use district got developed with housing, they are congregated housing, multi-family housing, and there are more density of the population comparing to single-family homes. So I think they actually worth a little bit more protection. So for that reason, my opinion is to be consistent, we should remove the smoke shops from mixed use and a neighborhood commercial. And they can still operate in community commercials, or we don't have any regional commercial. But if we do, that would be the outlet mall. They can operate there. But that's my own comment based on the proposed resolution. Thank you.
Commissioner Rowland.
Thank you. Yeah, this is interesting because, you know, I can make these findings, and I think that what Gabriel said, that you know, we want to bring this in under regulation so that we've got a way to deal with it, because right now we just don't have a way to deal with it. Perfectly appropriate. But I think the chair brings up some very good points about what we had asked for and what some of the motivation is. I think ultimately the city council's boss, but you know, they're going to make the final decision, of course, but it's our job to give them our best thinking and our best advice, along these lines. I worry a little bit, maybe the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. maybe, for instance, maybe a little arbitrary. We have a small business owner who's apparently hasn't had any problems going, till 10 p.m. I look at, we are generally a fairly affluent community, but we do have a lower income population, even though pawnbrokers and check cashers have some poor reputations for good reasons. There's also a certain service that they do offer. People don't have bank accounts, they need to get checks cashed. They may not have easy transportation someplace, they may work late. If there's a reason to restrict the time, then yeah, let's restrict the time. But so far, I don't see a reason to restrict the time, say, to say closing any earlier than 10 p.m., for instance, or 9 p.m. or something like that. So I'm just a little bit wary of kind of imposing something that may be arbitrary that we don't necessarily need. The security plans, again, some of the businesses, check cashers, pawnbrokers, if those are businesses that tend to attract a certain element that is a problem, then a security plan seems prudent. I'm not sure a smoke shop necessarily fits into that. Apparently we haven't seen that. If it's there and we don't know about it, then it'd be good for us to know about it. So I'm just looking at ways to not impose unnecessary burdens on some of these small businesses that we don't need to. And if we need to, by all means, we should do it. We do it for all sorts of businesses. The time frame I think we need to look at and ask ourselves, is that appropriate? Security plans and perhaps other things. I'm all for restricting these in the way that you've described. It does really restrict them where they can be in our city, but that's probably an appropriate thing. I tend to think, commercial is commercial, and in neighborhood commercial, there's already restrictions in terms of if someone is in neighborhood commercial, they can't open a smoke shop near a park. That's perfectly appropriate. But if there's a neighborhood commercial area that's not near a place where children are, then they're already pretty restricted. So I would say probably allow them there and then have the same restrictions. They still couldn't go into NC 1.1, NC 1.2 because of their proximity to where kids are and that sort of thing. But uses change. Park may move someplace, and that might open something up in an area while it closes something up in another area. And per Bart's comments, we don't want someone saying, well, why did they restrict it in NC 1.1 but allow it in NC 1.3? Well, it's just because we're kind of doing a double restriction that we didn't really need to impose. So I would say, allow it in the zone, and of course disallow it if it's close to a sensitive use like that. So while I can make the kind of bottom line is while I can make the findings, I feel like I just feel like maybe we haven't thought about this quite enough per Bart's comments, what we were asking for in the previous meeting, and, are these times appropriate? I don't know. It doesn't maybe sound like it, but perhaps there's more to it than we're seeing, and it would be good to see that justification if it exists. So that's my feeling.
Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would agree with that. It's a little bit of a head scratcher if we're going to impose special conditions on hours of operation and have separation buffers. It's kind of a little excessive in my opinion, yeah. I am a fan of separation buffer, and I'm a fan of a consistent one, not just 100 or 300, but say pick a lane and say 300 period for separation from sensitive uses, separation from other like uses. We've already got a 300 buffer in for pawnbroker to pawnbroker, smoke shop to smoke shop. Why not 300 feet from sensitive uses? I hate to say it, but it's not uncommon. Other cities are doing 500. It's 500 is pretty common. But I don't know that our maps if that would completely eliminate all opportunities in the city. I mean, we've had that kind of finite research done before on other types of projects where we've identified how many opportunities that would actually exist. Would we completely eliminate it at that point?
Commissioner, I think probably most of the opportunities would be eliminated. I mean, but we'd have to do the mapping to demonstrate that, so.
Okay. Also, by right or a conditional use permit, I think, in my opinion, it's just not necessary to come back to us if all of the conditions have been met. That's something that staff could handle. It meets all of the criteria, requirements for the use. In cases where, say, there would be an encroachment into whatever buffer is set, something like that would certainly come back here. We'd have to kind of think about, really ponder how appropriate that would be, given the special circumstances of that particular property or use. So other than that, I think there might be some more massaging to do on this before we send this forward. I mean, there's not a lot, but there's still some things that are still in question, and I think it warrants further evaluation. And also, I want to add that I'm completely on board with Commissioner Wu's suggestion that these uses not be, specifically smoking and vaping not be in mixed-use areas. That just makes perfect sense to me. That's all I've got to add on that.
Okay, Mal, were you able to come to a conclusion for the applicant regarding time restrictions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is really for the commission. But based on my review of Chapter 17.72, it looks like our ordinance is drafted in a way that would protect an existing use from changed regulations. There is language in the initial paragraph, the purpose paragraph of the nonconforming use chapter that talks about changes to regulations. So it appears that we have a pretty broad nonconforming use ordinance. It's not always the case that is protected, but it looks like it is here.
Okay. You'll have to find your own legal opinion, but that's the one for us. So it appears that there is protection for your hours of business. Okay. I see no more questions. I just want to go through a couple of items real quick. We have to make some recommendations if we move this along. And in the resolution, we're being asked that the city received complaints and concerns about, this is on the first page of the resolution. Cities received complaints and concerns about the operation of these businesses in San Clemente, including excessive illegal signage, donations left outside, whatever, and merchandise on display outside. And this is what we were basing these restrictions on: smoke shops, check cashers, and pawnbrokers. So the resolution, I don't find that covering what we've done here. I'd like to see the resolution really address, and this is just one person here, I'm not speaking for the whole commission. Then the same thing holds true with the ordinance itself, and where it says, whereas the city has received complaints and concerns about the operation of these businesses in San Clemente, excessive illegal signage, donations left outside, and merchandise on display, these types of violations impact some businesses, districts in the city, and may adversely affect city's ability to attract and retain businesses. I'm not sure there's a use you can't say we've had complaints about signage. I mean, there's nothing unique to these businesses spelled out here. I think we need something spelled out in the ordinance that makes these unique. And I think there are issues as far as our operation, but it's not in either the ordinance or the resolution. So we can either move this along, or we can ask to have it looked at and those kind of things cleared up, or we send it to council and let them work it out. Button.
I just have a quick question
for council on what Chairman Crandall was speaking of there. If we haven't had that illicit testimony that relates to those items that are the basis or the findings that we're making in here, does that put us at risk for the ordinance being arbitrary and capricious?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it's a good question. These are not protected uses. If this were, say, an adult use, then we could be in harm's way. Uses like this, the Commission and the Council have broad legislative authority to regulate in any way that they see fit. So, again, these aren't protected constitutionally. You're probably okay. The one that could get closest to the edge would be pawnbrokers. But otherwise, you're okay.
Okay, do we have any other discussion, or somebody want to venture a motion? And it can be, like I say, either move it along, revise it, or continue studying it.
Well, we could give some direction to staff and then table the motion, or not table, but
Table.
continue the motion might be better. They might want to continue to a date certain. So I know, Bart has said a number of things. Do we want to list some things in particular for staff and give them some specific?
I think we have it in our minutes from the previous meeting that weren't responded to. There's a list of them that were basically looking for information that justifies everything we've done.
If that's the direction the Commission wants to go, I recommend we take some straw vote on particular item that each Commissioner wants to bring up. That will give the staff some.
Well, let's continue discussion then. And what items would you like to bring up?
Well, for me, cleaning up the text, that's a no-brainer. But for removal to smoke or tobacco shops from mixed-use zone.
That is a potential item, yes.
In neighborhood commercial, limit them outside of 300 feet from any existing residential uses. In other words, if there's already a house,
not just the zone, but if it's existing
there, and then they cannot operate within 300 feet of that. But other than that, the zone itself, we will allow them to operate in that zone. Like the Commissioner ruling says, we're going to have a conditional use permit, like C, in neighborhood commercial zones. Some of the zone will be excluded anyway because of the 300 feet distance. But when they somehow meet that requirement, they still need to be 300 feet minimum away from any existing, in the neighborhood commercial, that would be affordable housing. If there's housing there, the smoke shop needs to be 300 feet away.
For insensitive uses as well, parks, schools.
We have
that's already in
300 feet.
Yeah, that's what. Well, parks, yeah.
But it's 300 for smoke shops, yeah.
Okay. Do you have something, Commissioner Kozinski, you'd like to also?
Yeah, I'm in favor of tabling this and reworking some of this language. I would also possibly extend the time from 7 p.m. to 10. Since we're limiting it to commercial spaces, pretty much.
Okay.
To provide the Commissioner some background on this, most of the tobacco shops that I was able to, the owners I spoke with, most of the businesses do open till about 9 or 10 o'clock, and so just some background.
Okay, Commissioner Rulon, do you have a?
Yeah, I'm just actually looking back at the minutes and maybe some things we haven't talked about. There was a couple of possible items. Requested additional information regarding the 100 complaints that have come up in the last 20 years, including whether complaints were justified, et cetera. So we did, in the staff report, get the list of, I think, 7 complaints, and most of those were signage issues. if there's something else, I guess, and then most of the other complaints were all the thrift stores, which we're not talking about right now. So I guess we really understand that one, that's the problem is, those seven things over 20 years. So we're okay there. Request additional hours including correlation between illicit activities in these stores. So police enforcement, increased public safety might be the first step. So there's that, what do we need to worry about with illicit activity? I guess we have one or two check cashing areas, we got a few smoke shops, and no pawnbrokers right now. So maybe if we understood more about, it might be helpful to understand more about the problems that are law enforcement issues, and probably tied into, say, how their current hours of operation. They open till 10 right now and they have no problems, or they open till 9 and they have lots of problems. Knowing that kind of thing would be helpful. And then the other one was, that I noticed, was establish staff's preference. Table item to ensure adequate time for gathering information, clarifying intent, and meeting with stakeholders before bringing a revised ordinance. So I know you met with the gentleman who spoke with us. I don't know if there was other people you might have met with, other owners of check cashing stores, or people who might have an issue with these kinds of businesses. Did you have a chance to meet with any of those?
Yeah, not really the check cashiers. The list that we have for check cashiers, there was one that was identified that no longer exists, and then there's a second one that was identified, which operates out of the Walmart location.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was really wondering about that one.
yeah, so it's pretty limited in the city, but there can be additional follow-up with them. I haven't spoken with anyone at Walmart.
Okay. And it might be good to hear from the other side, if there is one. If City Council has asked for this, they may be hearing from some people who have objection, so it'd be good to speak to them as well, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so anyway, those were of the things that we listed, the last time around. Those were the two things really that we might want to hear a little more from you on.
Okay.
Commissioner Wu? Your light's on.
This is a question for the council. Council just answered Commissioner Talley's question. So I'd like the council to elaborate a little bit about a pawn shop. You said with the exception of a pawn shop, alluding to potential encroachment of a pawn shop with a certain right. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, after saying that, I thought through that. The reality is that we're not banning uses here. We're simply imposing distancing requirements and conditional use permit requirements. As such, we're fine. The issue with pawnbrokers would be if a court could ever find that there was some kind of a speech issue wrapped up in that business. They're not going to find that with regard to check cashing or with smoke shops, but pawnbrokers, I guess you could make a stretch of an argument there. I'm very comfortable with these regulations, very comfortable with the idea of distancing, imposing a CUP requirement on them. So there's really no concern there. It's just a different animal than, say, a smoke shop, but it's not constitutionally suspect in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights on, but Eileen, I got one thing I just want to make sure gets in the minutes, that we're looking at this in a land use, with a land use eye. And to make land use decisions, we need to base them on something. Best judgment sometimes can do it without additional facts. Our legal advice is that we can do that necessarily without the supporting documentation to limit them and restrict them in some way, shape, or form. Is that correct?
It's ideal to have.
Even absent documentation, you always want to be able to make findings regarding what
That's
you're
where I've
doing.
been struggling
Even if those, you don't want to make findings out of whole cloth. That's always a bad idea. So it's a good practice to have some kind of facts before you that a reasonable commissioner could base his or her decision on.
Okay, thank you. So do we have someone who will make a motion, one of the three options?
Well, I think Do you have what you need from us? You have the information you need from us? Have we been clear enough?
Yeah, there's a few things I heard. One is potentially look at expanding the hours of operation to 10 p.m. Maybe looking a little bit more at maybe other complaints beyond code of compliance, maybe with the police regarding illicit activities, and maybe hours of operations might impact that as well. Remove potentially the smoke and tobacco shops as a conditionally permitted use in mixed-use zones. And I know that's what Commissioner Hoop recommended.
I think it was mixed use and neighborhood commercial.
My recommendation is to remove them from mixed-use zones. Then in neighborhood commercial use zones, allow them, but at a development standards, they should be 300 feet away from existing housing projects.
And then potentially touch base with other stakeholders as well. Does that sound like what we?
Yeah, that would, basically, it's the entire requested documentation that we did from our last meeting that we haven't received.
Okay. All right, then I will, I'll make a motion to continue this. Would you like this to a date certain? Like the 23rd is our next meeting, the 5th is a meeting after that, June 19th is the one after that. You want me to pick one, or you want me to table it?
Yeah, uncertain. No, I would do a date certain, so maybe June 19th would be enough time for us.
June 19th? All right, then I will move that we continue this item to the Planning Commission meeting of June 19th, 2019.
Second.
We have one question before the vote.
Can I, since I joined this conversation late, can I vote on the tabling, or should I recuse?
If this were a public hearing, it'd be a different thing altogether if this were, say, a CUP hearing, but yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so we have a motion by Rulon. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Wu. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you could let the record reflect that my son's 10U baseball team, which I was managing, won the game tonight. So
Congratulations.
I apologize for my tardiness here, but we move on to the finals now, so it was a nail-biter.
It was all coaching.
I won't disagree.
Let's see, where'd my agenda go here? I got it. We're up to new business. Commissioner Talley was not here at the beginning of the meeting, and had you heard about Mayor Schwartz?
I did.
Okay, very good. Just wanted to make sure. So, any new business? Excuse me. Was it hidden underneath there?
He just gave it to her.
So it was about on De La Estrella. This one, 7A? Okay.
Someone gone, or is it?
Yeah. It's been approved.
What more parking spots we don't have? Why? I don't know. If you can't see to come out of the driveway, it's no different from backing up on Delmar. When you have a big truck next to you and backing up, take your time going out.
Thank you very much.
Waste all this time.
Old business?
Application was, I didn't get this until 3rd. It's dated the 1st.
I have old business.
That's 4 working days to talk to the city.
Do we have any old business?
I do have one item on old business. So I was reviewing the council agenda for last night's meeting, which was continued, and I noticed that the leaf blower ordinance that we recommended to the council was sent up, and what struck me as odd was that the leaf blower ordinance was sent up with recommendations from the Planning Commission, as well as an alternative proposal that was put forward by staff. Now, we're on a Planning Commission, and Planning Commission and Council always have these disagreements where the Council exercises their, their prerogative and overrules things that we do.
Absolutely.
And, everybody stomps their feet and say, why do I do that on Planning Commission if, the Council's going to do what they want anyway? And that's just kind of part of what we do. But I was shocked that staff had kind of usurped that power for themselves and provided an alternative proposal after our public hearing on the matter, right? Because we have a public hearing so that we can make findings, and then that gets sent up to council, which does not have a public hearing on. It's not docketed as a, or agendized as a public hearing. And so I'm curious as to why.
Yeah, when the council report was being reviewed, there was still some concern from code compliance about the enforcement of the leaf blower regulations. And so there was a request that modifications be suggested to the city council. Additionally, there was some concern from Public Works about city operations of leaf blowers not being completely exempted as they were requesting initially. So that's how that occurred. The recommendation from Plan Commission is still proceeding to City Council, but you know, that is correct. There is an alternative.
So I have a problem with that. I mean, I think that is absolutely Bush League for staff to do that. And if staff has a problem and Public Works has a problem, then they need to send it back to the Planning Commission, reopen the public hearing, because we address those issues, the public address those issues, and I think that is, you know, candidly, bureaucracy, you know, not liking what its appointed officials are doing and trying to take it upon themselves to legislate away. It was not just some alternatives, it was a recommendation to not follow Planning Commission's recommendation and to use staff's subsequent recommendation instead. And again, I'm being very blunt, but I find that offensive. I think that is, I think that puts us in an adversarial nature with staff. It certainly puts me in an adversarial nature with staff when they come in here. And I don't think that's appropriate. And I think we weren't given a heads up on that. I found it because I saw the agenda report. I mean, no notice to Planning Commission? It's just disrespectful. We volunteer our time here, and we spent probably close to 3 hours on leaf blowers. Sorry for that, but we did.
Is that a new business or what is?
No, that's under old business.
It's under old business.
That is.
Okay. So council, when does a agenda item put underneath the public hearing, when does it become a old business or new business? What's the essential difference between them?
Well, old business is any business that's happened before at the Planning Commission dais, right? If the question is, what can we talk about under the Brown Act? The council, or the commission in this case, is given an opportunity every meeting to make brief comments on items within their jurisdiction. What we can't do is have a lengthy conversation between commissioners and staff. So what's happening right now is okay. If it were to proceed for an extra 2 or 3 minutes and we all chimed in and had a conversation about it, that would be impermissible. But this is okay.
This is not done business yet. The city's council hasn't made a decision, so we probably should limit our discussion.
No. I think staff has run amok and gone to council with an alternative proposal, and you know, I will conclude my brief statement on that. But I hope that I've expressed my you know, my shock and my disappointment, and I think we'd be afforded the common courtesy of at least a heads up on that in the future.
I would like to just ask procedurally, when we send up a recommendation to council, which this one would be for same as this other ordinance, and it receives public comment or approval and it goes up, isn't that what every recommendation has to do? Isn't that the procedure that we're required to file? So is it inappropriate? It seems like it, to provide an alternative without Planning Commission's review on the same ordinance?
Well, you're asking a lawyer what's appropriate and inappropriate. I'm gonna answer what's legal and not legal. All kidding aside, the government code requires that the Planning Commission review and recommend approval or non-approval of any amendment to the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission also has the ability to review and recommend revisions to other ordinances. This practice of providing alternatives to council after the recommendation, it happens in some places and not in others. So it really is a policy consideration for the council and for the commission to discuss. So if there's an issue with it, this is certainly something that the council could take up. But the legal requirement is simply a recommendation. Staff can chime in their staff report. There's nothing illegal about that. Whether it's improper is a different question and a policy question.
Thank you very much. And if we did want to discuss it, what forum would we use? Would it have to be agendized?
Yeah, we are getting to the point now where we need to move on from the conversation, but if this is something to be discussed, then it would have to be agendized. It's really, these types of policy questions are questions for the council more than the commission. That said, this is something that we as a commission, or you as a commission, could discuss and then ask the council to take up at a future date.
Thank you very much. Okay,
would it be all right if I said a word in response about the process, not about the leaf blower ordinance in particular, or would we be stepping out of line?
So each commissioner is given an opportunity to make brief comments. So if you can just keep your comments brief, as long as it's not a conversation or a response to what's been said previously, that would be okay.
All right, well, I will pass. Thank you.
Can't do it.
Okay, so we'll close old business and do reports of commissioners and staff. Do we have any reports? I see none. Do we have a motion?
Well, Chair, I do have a demonstration I wanted to give the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
And so we have a new online tool that I'm excited to report about. I think I mentioned it to a few of you before. It's called our Development Story Map, and it's launched on the city website. So if you ever had questions about development that's being processed through the city, this actually puts it all in one place on the city website. And so this launched yesterday. We were hoping to present this to City Council last night, but the meeting was canceled due to lack of quorum. So what this story map does, it's an interactive map that identifies all the development projects going through the process right now. It's color-coded and identifies if a project is under review, approved, under construction, or completed. And with the touch of a mouse, you could pan into the city boundaries and identify where these projects are happening. So if, for example, you might recall Chick-fil-A was approved, you could pan down to where you know Chick-fil-A is located, and it's approved project by the Planning Commission, and it'll pull up on this little screen right here, and it'll give you a picture and rendering of that project, and and a description of the project. Let's say you wanted some more detailed information. Well, you can click on this link for more information, and you can see more renderings, elevation, site plan. This also identifies all the case numbers, the address, the square footage of the site, who the applicant is, when it was approved by the Planning Commission, who the planner is, and their contact information. So this can be really helpful for residents, businesses, those looking to do business with the city. And a lot of the information is there, and I can't guarantee 100% is there. So if you know any projects that we might not have included on here, basically we're trying to include more high-level projects, not simple applications like ministerial applications like signs and those type of applications we don't think the public is really that interested in. But these are larger projects like restaurants, new commercial developments, new mixed-use developments, new multifamily projects. So we also have on here identified the boundaries for an opportunity zone. So you might have heard there's a federally designated opportunity zone in the North Beach and Los Molinos Business Park. And so there's incentives for investors that decide to purchase property or purchase businesses in this opportunity zone. But so it's pretty exciting. You can also pan down with this panel at the bottom of the screen and see all the projects. So we have 30 projects that are listed. And so this can be exciting too, especially for projects that are just submitted to the city. And those are all listed here. Some of these you haven't seen yet, maybe the DRSC has seen because they seem to see the projects first. But if you want to know about them, most of the information is here, and you can contact us because our contact information for the project planner is there. But and if you want to go to a list of all those projects, you can just go to this list, and it has links to all that detailed information. So
that's wonderful.
So we're pretty excited about it. I think the public will be excited about it as well. There's probably other capabilities that we're not aware about, but this also lets you know where the concentration of the projects are. So there's actually quite a bit in the works on Del Mar and also approved projects. So
can you pull out just a little bit?
Well, that's very informational for the public and for the development industry. I do wonder, when the federal government delineate that opportunity zone, and did they ever seek input from us?
No. Well,
how did they come up with this?
They do send a request to all the cities to see if they have an eligible opportunity zone, and so these are usually more like distressed or more low-income census tracts in the city. And I was surprised that this census tract qualified, and so someone must have sent something to the state because the state was responsible for sending those requests from cities to the federal government.
But that's a census tract.
Yes, or census block.
Okay.
I might be confusing them. Census block or census tract.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
just a quick.
Oh, they did? Yeah. So this is available on the city website if you want to see where to locate this at. It's actually here under Department Services, and I might be missing, under Planning Services, it's right here, Development Project Map. So there's a long list of items, so it is kind of hidden in there, but that's available.
So this is independent of E-Track. So this is the planning division's.
Correct. So we
track it.
Yeah, we maintain this, and so we'll identify when it's updated. It's on here. It says updated May 6th, and we'll be doing that every month.
Very nice.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have someone who would like, a motion by Mr. Talley?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission to be held May 23rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. in council chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California, as the May 22nd, 2019 study session and Planning Commission meetings were previously canceled.
Second. We have a second by Rulon, motion by Talley. All in favor? Aye. Passes, what do we got now? 6-0.
6-0. Hey, Gabriel, when's those?